Hi, welcome to another edition of Proffitt's Resurrection Land Cruisers TV. Today I am excited to show you this really cool body off restoration with a patina refinish that we finished, and I'm excited to run you around the shop and show you a secret project. So here we go. This guy right here is a mechanical kind of revamp of this other restoration, and we put a special kind of fuel pump in it that Jordy's going to tell you about.
Yeah, so the fuel pump is mounted in the tank in this vehicle, which is completely essential. We've learned from trial and error that if you put your fuel pump on the frame and not in the tank, it will overheat and you will vapor lock and be sitting on the side of the road. So the tank is the place for the fuel pump.
For fuel injection.
For fuel injection systems, that's right.
Carbureted, those little bitty 7 PSI carbureted fuel pumps, they could be on the rail.
They usually do just fine, and really if carbureted, most motors support a mechanical fuel pump on the engine block, and that's
well, we haven't used a low PSI electric fuel pump for a carbureted in a decade.
Yeah. The Toyota pump on the side of the 2F block is fantastic.
Better option anyway.
Yeah.
But I just got a phone call the other day from a guy who's like, hey, I'm broke down in Montana somewhere, and he knew what it was. Lots of times they don't know what it is. I've had people route their fuel pump with longer hoses and longer wires into a cooler on the back of the car with ice in it to make road trips happen. Because it just, what happens is the fuel gets processed by the engine and it just does this big loop through the engine back into the tank, through the engine back into the tank. And slowly the fuel in the tank will get up to nearly engine operating temperature.
Very hot.
And so when that happens, the fuel pump that's not being cooled is outside, it's getting hot, it's working its butt off, and it'll start to cavitate, and it'll act like it's running out of gas. But then you let it sit for 20 minutes.
Then you go for a little while.
Go for a little while, right? Or fill the tank, right? Add some cool fuel, go for a little while. Put an ice bath on it. But anyway, an in-tank pump will not do that. You know what's interesting is so many people still sell kits with inline pumps. I don't know why they do it.
Still shops saying that it's okay too, and it's just not okay.
Yeah, it's not okay. All right, now I want to talk about this. So in addition to the in-tank pump, we've got another cool doodad on this. I just came up with these. I wish I would have done this years ago. So oftentimes on these Land Cruisers, we were running Dakota digital gauges. And I don't know why Dakota does not have a pre-programmed range of ohms that matches the Land Cruiser fuel sender that works with their gauges, but they don't, which is crazy. But anyway, so we end up having to program the Land Cruiser gauge, which is not very accurate the way that Dakota has you do it. But there are a lot of fuel senders that do have a pre-programmed amp range in the Dakota digital gauges. The problem is none of them line up with the holes on the top of a Land Cruiser gas tank. That's where this comes in. So you can take this adapter, there's already one installed on this. These holes match the Land Cruiser fuel pattern, which is not symmetrical, believe it or not. That looks like a pentagon, but it's off. And then it will take a GM style fuel gauge or fuel gauge sender that does work with the Dakota better, and that way you get better accuracy on your fuel gauge. These are going to go on the website for sale in the PRLC Solutions part pretty soon. I'm going to call this the LLLC. You guys heard of an LC? That's a Land Cruiser. Then there's an LLC, that's a limited liability corporation. This is an LLLC, which I'm calling the Lesson Learned Land Cruiser. Because this client, who's a super nice guy, definitely learned a lesson by taking this to a couple of other different, actually 3 or 4 different shops to get different things done. And slowly, as it traveled from one location to the other, it got more and more and more destroyed until we had to bring it here and pretty much just go through the whole thing and redo it. We had to change the engine, the transmission, the transfer case, the axles, the suspension, the cooling system, the seating, some of the paint and body, and all of the wiring. because people that had their hands on this didn't necessarily care. But we care, and so this thing is actually going to be, it's not one of our restorations, important to mention, but man, have we gone through and corrected lots of stuff and had fun doing it. And this will be out there on the trail pretty soon. And now it's time to go look at the secret project. I'm just kidding, we can't talk about the secret project. Let's go this way. No. Yes, yes. We can't talk about the secret project, so instead we came to talk about your project, which is almost as cool as the secret project.
I don't know about that.
No, well, yeah, but just, it's the lot of work that makes them cool, right?
Yeah,
you know that.
Not in the moment, I guess.
You're gonna, no, it's after all the work is done. Yeah. You're right, that's how it works. After all the work is done, it becomes the coolest thing you ever did. Before, here, let me. Sir, what can you tell me about the secret project? Good answer. No, your project, that's a big heavy piece of metal.
Yeah, it's the Baxter on my over the head 3000, right?
That sounds like a good tool.
Yeah, great tool.
That looks like a cross member to me. I was just saying how lots of times people make terrible cross members when they do engine swaps.
Yeah, this one's a bit of a pain because I have radius arm mounts right where the cross member wants to live.
I remember when I was talking about how weird it was that we put a 2F in an 80 series.
This one's worse, I think, because it doesn't fit as well. That's literally it. It doesn't fit as well.
Yeah. Well, we'll let the viewers see if they can tell what engine it is that we're putting in this 80 series chassis. We won't say it, but anyway, yeah. I could see why that'd be complicated. So, let's go look at it.
Oh God.
So we're in mock-up on this rig, so that's why it's not pretty. Don't worry, it will be pretty. In mock-up, what we do is we build the whole truck pretty much, and then we tear it down and restore everything. So we're in mock-up on this. What are we gonna call this thing?
I don't even know. This is such a complex custom project. I don't know what you'd call it.
It'll get a name. It's definitely, in the name has to be the word Australian, because the theme behind this rig is Aussie. Hats off to and cheers to all our Australian friends and viewers. Aussie right-hand drive, 45, 47?
I would say more of a 47, like a troop carrier kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of, but four-door, custom four-door, 47, but I'm not gonna say what letter because that might give away the engine. On an 80 series chassis, the DJ did something too that I think may have been the first time it was ever done. He did what?
What, the engine swap?
No, well, that and...
Oh, the right-hand drive conversion from a left-hand drive 80 to switch over all the panhard bracket and steering box brackets and everything, that one?
To a right-hand drive 80.
Yeah.
That probably hasn't been done because most of the time when people do conversions to that, they're going from right-hand drive to left-hand drive, unless it's something that's going to Australia, which this isn't. But anyway, yeah, DJ actually did a right-hand drive conversion on an 80 series chassis for this right-hand drive something J series 47 something custom four-door thing, but it's really cool. We'll just leave it at that. This is going to be the feature of the year, but probably not till next year.
Yeah, it's going to be a while. Yeah.
So I mentioned, this is just because we walked by here and I saw this. I mentioned that an engine conversion, the radiator mounts a way to sort of ferret out whether an engine conversion was done well. Cross member, another thing that people do poorly. Here's another one, battery mounts. So in fact, I saw a Land Cruiser engine conversion of an R2.8. I'm actually involved in the litigation about that conversion, where the guys who did it actually mounted the battery with a men's leather belt. Probably can't even talk about that. I'm gonna. It's hard to mount a battery well. Here's Alex's solution to a battery mount on an FJ40 with a Cummins R2.8. You want to talk about complicated? Well, it's not that complicated, but complicated enough. That sits on the frame, bolts to the side of the frame and the top of the frame, and takes a factory FJ40 battery tray right there and puts it in a place where there's just barely room for a battery. But anyway, Alex makes really cool stuff. That is a really cool battery mount. And it's things like that that make the difference between a good engine conversion and a bad one. Anybody can throw one in. It's the fabrication that matters. It's the fabrication that matters. Every once in a while, we are lucky enough to get an FJ40 in that the customer has owned for a long time, and he has a lot of personal bumps and dents and scratches that he put in it, and each one of those things is a fond memory, and they want to keep it. In those cases, we often do what we call a patina restoration, or a patina resto-mod in some cases, and that's what this is. It's hard to find a mustard yellow Land Cruiser that shows good patina. Usually the patina Land Cruisers that we do are the older ones from the 60s that are red or blue or green. Mustard yellow has to be really lucky to patina well, and that's exactly what this one did. The patina on this thing is phenomenal, and if you look at the hood, fenders, running boards, and doors, you're going to see a lot of those scratches and bits of surface rust and failing paint. It's not failing to the point where it's going to cause problems, but failing to the point where it just gives the vehicle character. And we kept all of that on this vehicle, at least as much as we could. Let's talk about that process. So when we do a patina restoration, what we want to do is get rid of any of the stuff that's not patina. That's significant damage, dents, things caused from accidents, and also bad rust. Cancerous rust isn't good patina. So in this case, this FJ40 had been involved in a really heavy collision on this side. So we replaced this rocker and replaced this whole quarter panel. Because the rear sill was rusty, we also replaced the entire rear sill, and there was quite a bit of work to do on the interior wheel wells to replace rusted panels, things like that. And so all of that's done, and then you try to match the original color as best you can, and sometimes you'll even come in here and put dents and scratches in the new paint. We didn't do that. We're going to leave this new patina up to the customer to create. So this vehicle has new paint throughout this area, the rear sill, the top, the rain gutter is new also. Pretty much the rest of the vehicle, the hood, the front fenders, the cowling for the most part. Some of the cowling's been repainted, but most of that is old paint. So that's what we're trying to do, preserve stuff like this that looks really cool, but protect the vehicle and keep it from rusting. On the interior, there's evidence of rust repair, always the top of the rear sill, and in this case, like I said, rust repair on the wheel wells. So what we did on the inside of this Land Cruiser is we sprayed it in body color 2-part polyurea spray liner, which is actually a treatment we do on most of our restorations anyway. In addition to that, there was rust on the bottoms of all 4 doors, and some paint work was done on the doors to repair that. Other than that, even though we kept a lot of the original finish on the vehicle, it has still been disassembled all the way down to the smallest subcomponent, like all of our body off restorations, and we'll see what the underside looks like when we get it up on the hoist a little bit later. Let's look at the engine compartment. In addition to the restoration, the owner wanted to modernize this Land Cruiser a little bit. So starting under the hood, we did that with the engine. This is the very popular 3FE engine conversion we do. You guys have seen these enough to recognize that we love 3FEs, and we spend a lot of time on the cosmetic looks of them, powder coating, rezinking, and refinishing the engine, which gives it a really poppy underhood look. Especially stands out in this case because we've got the original patina on the firewall and also the underside of the hood. So I think it's a really cool look to it. We've got a 3FE back to a 4-speed transmission, the original 4-speed transmission from this vehicle. And then we've done some modifications to the axles and things like that, which I'll show you when we're under the truck later. You guys know we love the 3FE. I've had some people ask why. Here's why. Toyota engineering is almost always better, no, it's always better than aftermarket engineering, and usually better than other OE engineering. So putting aftermarket fuel injection on a 2F just never works as good as one that was designed by Toyota. For that reason, we buy every FJ62 and early 80 we can, just for this engine so we can rebuild them for 40 series. In addition to the 3FE, under the hood of this Land Cruiser is an ARB dual compressor for the air lockers. Inside this FJ40, you can see a few of the other things that we've done to modernize it. To start us out, there's the vintage AC. And that's another thing that's good about a 3FE, by the way. 3FEs all had air conditioning on them from the factory. That allows us to use the factory bracketry and compressor with the vintage Gen 4 AC, and that combination works excellent. Also, on the dash of this Land Cruiser, you'll notice we've added Dakota digital gauges, which are almost a must these days for accurate instrumentation, especially when you're doing an engine conversion. There's also the standard PRLC ashtray switch panel, in this case with switches for the ARB compressor, both lockers, and a dual USB charging port. We've also added a PRLC Tuffy box. This popular modification really just takes a standard Tuffy box and customizes it slightly so that it has a more modern look. We add a cell phone tray to the top, in this case with wireless charging, and a little escutcheon so that you can get to the button that opens the Tuffy box. This pad, it just is a lot more comfortable, and your elbow rests in a way better spot than it does on the old school Tuffy box 1970s dog bed pillow pad that they still put on there. On the front of this Tuffy box, you also see that we've got switches for seat heaters and the auxiliary lighting both on the front and the back of the vehicle. The customer also hand chose and selected this awesome bespoke interior, which turned out awesome. It's leather and a woven cloth that looks absolutely fantastic and period correct. And we use that throughout the interior, including the old school Tuffy boxes in the back. This Land Cruiser is used for gear more than passengers, and so the customer chose not to have a rear seat in the back. One of the things that's hard to do with pretty much everything we do here, but especially on these patina restorations, is drawing the line of what gets refinished and what doesn't. You have to just kind of make those decisions as you go, but one of our universal principles is that if it's going to get bolted to a refinished surface, then we refinish the thing that gets bolted to the refinished surface. So in that, the floor of this Land Cruiser, the shifter boot rings, the seat mounts, the roll bar, the Tuffy box, the rear Tuffy boxes, all of those pieces are refinished to be new, and they're installed with new zinced fasteners, so you get that contrast between new and old. And there's lots of little places where we've kind of drawn the line in unique spots. In addition to all of that cool stuff I just told you about, this Land Cruiser also received a PRLC off-road front bumper with rigid light bars and Warn 8274 winch, as well as our standard PRLC dual swing-out rear bumper with a matching 33 by 1050 BFG all-terrain tire and the cooler basket for a Yeti 45. Now that we're done with that, let's pull this outside and put it up on the hoist, and we'll look at the underside of it. All right, so here it is on our fancy outside car wash lift. Well, that's not really that fancy, but it's sure cool. And so under here we can see where all the work is on a thing like this. So cosmetically speaking, this is all brand new underneath. The underside of the body after all the repairs, shot with yellow 2-part polyurea spray liner, body color, Line-X actually. And then the chassis, the frame, the engine, everything totally restored. Starting with the front, we've got the PRLC shackle reversal, back to the Old Man Emu 2.5-inch lift that's pretty standard on all of our 40 series builds. Same Old Man Emu 2.5-inch lift in the back. Of course, we went with our go-to Bilstein 5100 series shocks. Other than that, this thing looks kind of stock underneath, with the factory skid plate working, the original transmission and transfer case in its happy place, and the ARB air lockers and the diffs. This is a true FJ40, almost in its purest form, except for the 3FE, kind of all original underneath, keeping all the Toyota DNA. It's the way we like to do it, and this patina restoration is awesome. Thanks again for watching our episodes, and this episode of Proffitt's Resurrection Land Cruisers TV was created with the same energy and verve that all of our other ones are. So if you haven't seen them, go check them out. We put a lot of effort into this, and the people that have watched them all love them. So like this and share this, and let's get some traction for this. Everybody says, you need more viewers, you should have more viewers, you're deserving of more viewers, and I agree. So share this, show it to your friends, show it to your enemies, and thanks again for watching. Check us out on Instagram. We are Pro Cruiser. On Facebook, we're Proffitt's Resurrection Land Cruisers. ResurrectionLandCruisers.com is the coolest website on the planet. See you next time. Chad.
I don't know what to say.
Get in here. I'm doing all the talking. Luckily for you, I'm doing all the talking. You don't even need the... It took me an hour to load them by myself. It sucked. Out of a field in the sagebrush, and there was rats and mice and snakes. No, there wasn't really any of that stuff. To make it seem more dramatic. Yeah. And there was a thunderstorm. And Atlas was there.
That's your problem.
Tipped my tequila soda right over. Okay.